All right, Panther Lair, we are talking about Jaland Lowe's place in this week's power rankings. Now, if you read the end of my article after the game against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, you know that I noted that Jaland Lowe's turnovers have been increasing subtly. Now, a big product of that is the fact that he is now playing pretty much the entire game. That's a lot to ask for anybody, let alone a true freshman, but also the fact that teams have been kind of tweaking and adjusting to how they want to defend him in ball screen situations. So we're going to take a look at 8 possessions over the last 2 games, talk about what's worked for Jaland Lowe, why it's worked, and then how NC State kind of adjusted to this post the Notre Dame game and why it was a little bit more difficult for him. So let's go in, dive into these first possession here. This is going to be drop coverage against Notre Dame. Now, anytime somebody establishes a drop point this low, and then they also slowly sink back, if the screen is good, whether that's Jaland using it correctly or Federico or Guillermo setting it correctly, and his defender ends up having to trail, Lowe shreds those defenses. So you'll see here, this is a huge gap for him to play in. Not only that, but you have all these other help defenders now in help a lot longer. And so like the world is like his oyster, so to speak. He's going to make a nice little dump pass to Federico. He gets fouled. A little bit later here, you see it's going to be a screen with Guillermo. So the screen is going to be good. Jaland rubs right into it. That makes Marcus Burton run right into it. And now again, we have a really low drop point, and this is going to be sinking. Lowe always does such a good job of engaging the screener's defender. So rather than just let this guy do what he wants, he has a tendency to dribble out and find ways to make this defender pick him up. Again, all these other defenders in help much longer because of this. And that opens up a lob into Guillermo. You're not going to leave Blake Hinson. Easy 2 points. Now we see this here, Guillermo again, NC State game. Defender in a trail. They did, and you'll see this a little bit later here, NC State didn't try to have a drop point as low. So they were going to meet him a little bit higher here. But you'll see because he has to keep sinking, now you're going to help off Hinson a little bit just with a tag. But Lowe's just going to operate well in the space. There's not a lot of pressure here. He does well with the defender kind of in jail on his hip. And he shot about 6 floaters in this game. This is one of the ones that converted. Now, here's a tactic that doesn't work at all with him, and that is flat-out switching. He will shoot over you. He can go by you. He can pretty much do it all if you switch bigger defenders on him. So what did NC State do that was successful? Well, we talked a lot about, or I've talked a lot about how Jaland Lowe has ripped apart drop coverage. I put it out on X that he's been pretty much killing it in ball screen situations. But the one common denominator, and I pointed this out just a little bit ago, is that his defender is usually caught on the screen. The best way to defend Jaland Lowe right now in ball screen situations is for his defender to fight as hard as he can to get over that screen and then basically box him in. So you're going to see on this empty side pick and roll, he rejects the screen. That allows Horn to stay attached to him. And DJ Burns, who is like kind of a mountain of a man, they just box him in here. So, I mean, could he make a pocket pass into here? Potentially. This is going to be a tough catch for Federico, and I'm not sure if he does anything here, but it wouldn't be a turnover. But you'll see he just has so much less freedom when you box him in, primarily because his man fought over. Now that he's fought over, this allows the screener's defender to kind of tighten up a little bit as well, because help's already here. It almost kind of functions as a little bit of like a soft trap. And then Lowe commits a turnover. Here again, we're going to see this against drop. So up to touch, so not a deep drop point. I guess we should probably consider this up to touch. But you'll notice the defender is over here immediately. Because he's over immediately, now again, you'll probably notice early in ACC games, guys would just drop off of this. But Burns, to his credit, he actually did a pretty good job defending ball screens to maybe everybody's surprise. He's boxed in again. So can you throw this lob over to Federico? Again, where's he going to have to catch this at? It's a tough catch. And instead, because Burns is able to stride back with this defender, there's no room. This is going to be a high lob. Now, you probably noticed that some of Lowe's lobs and the guards' lobs tend to be a little bit high. That's going to be because they're going to be deterred with the defender right in his face. That's exactly what happens here. This is really hard to get this over top of Burns and drop it into Hinson. This ends up sailing into the stands. Okay, here we go. Now, this is going to be flat with the screen. It's going to be like a hard show. But again, you're going to see the defender immediately over the screen. And because this guy meets him flat with the screen, he's boxed in. Now, Jaland made a pass similar to this in a situation of like a hard show or being flat against Kyle Filipowski to open the game against the Duke Blue Devils, and he employed kind of just this little pocket pass here into Guillermo. Probably better suited, but the pressure is so great that the decision-making has to be much quicker. The processing has to be much quicker, so he opts instead for kind of a jump pass here. Defender DR gets his hand on it and ends up being a turnover. And then here again, you don't see this a lot, but some teams will hedge Jalen. It's probably not the biggest thing they've done or the biggest footprint of defense against him in ball screen situations, but this ends up being like a hard show hedge. Lowe, the reason this isn't great is because Lowe does get downhill on these things. Like, this is not, I mean, he could turn the corner on anybody, and I think that's a big problem because now you're really putting a lot of guys in help with what usually is a roller into the middle of the floor. Lowe does turn this over here as he kind of passes into nobody, but I think it just remains hedging may not be the best way to go about it just because he's going to probably turn the corner, and if somebody's rolling here, you're asking 3 guys to defend 4 for a pretty long time, depending on for how high up the ball screen happens. But just wanted to take note of that. Jalen's still a dynamic player, still should be the Pitt's primary offensive engine. I wrote about that on Panther Lair, obviously, but I just wanted to follow up on the fact that, you know, his turnovers are increasing. A lot of that is because he's playing a fair amount, but you also see how teams are going to adjust to defending him in ball screen situations. I expect more teams to adjust their drop point against him so that it's set a little bit higher and really emphasize to his defender they have to get over those screens. If they get over those screens and they kind of box him in, you really limit his options. If you trail in a big way and it does force that defender to have to drop and sink, he will absolutely destroy your defense. He's been doing that pretty much since he's been in the starting lineup. We've seen that against drops so many times. But again, really wanted to do a voice overlay for this as opposed to writing it out because I think this would probably be like a 2,000 word explanation. But also because you come to Panther Lair, you're reading my stuff. It's not just about taking videos and just saying here's what happened. It's about noticing trends. It's about following up with those things. So I hope you guys find the value in this, and we'll probably revisit this towards the end of the season.